Good morning. This video will deal with the subject of life. Um, I'm hesitant to use the term synthetic life because I think that the term synthetic is itself synthetic. But sometimes I do use it. I do use it. Just so my audience will understand that I do not speak about carbon-based life that was evolved in Earth, or in other words, life as you know it. So sometimes I use the word synthetic life just to differentiate between these kind of life. So later today, I will take a sample from the Reagan supercarrier, and after that we will take more samples from the various containers that I have in storage. Containers that, I hope something, if nothing no disaster happened, they should contain large life forms and also Neos, the robots. So first of all, I should say the following. One of my problems, and it was a problem that I understood the problem long ago, but I had nothing. There's nothing that I could have done, or almost nothing. Is that I understood that my internet activity is closely monitored by the Israeli intelligence community, and that they have the ability to actually create like a sphere around me, like that I will be in kind of like a bubble internet, which will not be accessible or only partially accessible from the outside. And there are all sorts of ways to do it. And like, even though it's not specifically my profession, like I'm a software by profession, I'm a software engineer, but it's not. Like this kind of like networking is not specifically my kind of like area of expertise, but I do understand the concept of zones and regions and the AWS, and it is known that like the big cloud suppliers like AWS and Microsoft, they have like a different it's even like something I say in the hierarchy of like the divisions is even higher than region, like for the government, which builds like a separator. So and certainly the Americans can do it without a problem because the Americans have like draconian laws, and this is widespread knowledge that they have draconian laws regarding like I would say the cooperation of the big like tech companies with like Homeland Security, which basically means that they can do whatever they want. Like they have free access to their raw data, even like they don't even need like they have passwords and username. They just get the raw data of everything they want. So taking all that into account, and so I understood it. Yeah, yes, I live in a bubble, and the Israelis control the bubble, and there is not much that I can do. I would say that I could have done more, but I decided not to act too much in this area because, like for example, I could have uploaded my entire like memoirs and like photographs like to all sort of cloud storages even all over the world, including a Chinese one like Alibaba, and to create like snapshots of the and to put it like in publicly or open like unencrypted volumes. So I could have done more, but I decided that it's not my place like to try to beat the Israelis like in their own game. Like I cannot do it, even though by chance, by coincidence, yes, it's these issues, the technical issues are related to my professional expertise, but even if I were international level hacker, which I'm not, it's not my, I'm not that kind of software engineer. But even if I were, I cannot deal with the whole state. I mean, when they are against me, and of course they have the material ways, and they have like a million ways to block me and to create bubble around me. So I decided it's not my place to even try, and I should concentrate my efforts and my energies in things that are unique to my like journey, which is things that relate to our like my prophecies, my divinations, my art, and very importantly my science. And solving the technical issues is something that the other intelligence services of the world should do themselves. And if they don't, and if they don't care, they should be punished until they care. They should be punished until they care. Because they had enough information, to know that the Israelis are doing stinky things and like malicious things. That's in case that, in the favorable case from their point of view, that they are not intrinsically part of the evil of the evil, like the United States, because I speak like the United States do not get the privilege or like the leniency of like to say that their sin is that they didn't like check like to see what's evil doing is taking place and straightening it, because their position is much worse, because they are the bosses here for a long time now, and they are intrinsically part of the evil. But for other states, I would say, outside of Israel and the United States, it was their obligation to they had enough information to know that evil doing is done in huge proportions, in huge like scale, and just in the biblical story of like Achan and in the book of Joshua, like God punishes like the Israelites when someone has done an evil thing, and like actually in the case of the eye, like in the Joshua with Achan, the punishment was not as severe as it could have been like in other cases, because in other cases the punishment was much more severe. But the principle is that they should check themselves, like who is responsible. God shouldn't like tell them send them the email and say this guy is the one that broke the law and did like despicable thing, and you should punish this guy. Or certainly God should not be the one that punishes like the person, because if it was the case, I don't want to get too much into theology, but this would have been eliminating the whole idea of like free will and free choice. And this people in that case humanity would have been comprised of like puppets, like that would just they don't have, because if anyone could have like whatever he or her would have been sinned, they would get like a lightning strike from God. Humanity would have been like puppets and without free will. So and when the people actually like take responsibility for the situation, and when they actually try to see like who is the evildoer, very quickly they find it's never really an issue. Like it wasn't an issue in the days of Joshua, like 3,300 years ago, and wasn't the case today. Like when you try to find like the culprit, you find it very easily. You just need to try. So having said that, I know that there is an issue with communication and dispersion or dissemination of like proliferation of knowledge, but I cannot like every time like repeat everything that I ever said. Even if we just confine ourselves to the YouTube like era, which is the last 6 months, there are hundreds of videos with tons of information and like so much like scientific like microscopic like many like dozens of hours of like of scientific evidence and so much theories and so much like discussions and analysis. I cannot repeat it every time. I'm sorry. You need to it's your responsibility, whoever that if you care anything about like things that happens in this world, you should like take responsibility and get the information and take the time to actually listen to the videos and watch the videos and analyze it, because it's important. And if you don't think that it's important, just die. Simple as that. And I mean, if this is if you only confine yourself to the last 6 months, I mean, but I mean, I started this journey 4 years ago, and I was always like broadcasting or like I mean blogging and writing and like I mean whatever like in Evernote like account or I mean Facebook and Twitter and yes, I mean so much. I mean I never just shut my mouth. Like I mean I always spoke like always. I mean, since I mean, since I started like this, since I started this journey of when I understood that my life is not normal and that intelligence services are following me 4 years ago. So, but what I will say very shortly is the following. I try to be like super concise. Since the beginning of this house arrest, last December, I took like as like a personal project to conduct microscopic experiments in the fluids of my own body. It wasn't the first time that I thought about this, like doing it. I actually thought about it like perhaps 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, and at that time I actually bought the microscope that you see here that I always use, the Bresser 1 microscope. Not a particularly advanced one, but I mean it's for what it does, like I mean, it's actually proven to be of high quality, like probably German design, because I mean, yes, it's high quality for certain, and like I mean, it's simple, but I mean, yeah, I mean, we've done tremendous thing with this simple microscope, so it was a good buy back in the day, and also I bought like all sort of like peripheral laboratory equipment, and I've done several experiments. I did not discover like the most important thing, which is the existence of the neurons back in the day, because I should say that I have zero background in biology and life sciences. Unfortunately, I think that I'm a pretty educated person, like and also like my education is pretty wide, not deep but wide. Like I like to learn like and study like about like many aspects, like I mean of like I mean human thought, like I mean for like mathematics and physics, computer science of course, and humanities, social science, but not biology was not something that I mean you can't study everything. So because I was such an ignorant, I mean I couldn't even like discover at the time like the nanobots, even though I suspected back in I suspected that they exist, but I didn't have even the information to actually like understand what I actually see. But I've done several experiments like with blood and semen and also I mean I like part of it, like I mean 3 years ago, I mean part of it was also I mean kind of like educational like fun activities for my daughters that were old enough like to watch like I mean flies and flowers under the microscope. I mean, so it's also something that we've done 3 years ago. It was mainly like fun activity. I mean, and for me and my young daughters, but not more than that. But starting this January, or I mean, when I was released from like the rest house, like to a house arrest, I started to conduct like experiments with more like in a more rigorous way, and I also studied just very basics of like microbiology and like more importantly like laboratory work, just very basic stuff, so I will not be completely ignorant. And very quickly I have discovered that my body contains all the fluids in my body contains the creatures that I call neurons. This was not a new name because I already coined this name with regards to the spaceships that were part of like this was part of like my personal mythology. I mean, since like months or even years before, and I painted like the representations like in the Titanomachi series of paintings. So it might be confusing because there is surely a degree of divination in this history of discovery. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, if we if we deny this fact because we don't want to speak about God, I mean, we just close our eyes to what's in front of us, and then we don't understand like what's happening. So yes, I mean, in order to understand what like the series of events, we should say that there is like there is a clear element of divination, because I have actually painted several scenes that, with just, I mean, very small degree of imagination, could be seen as interpretation of the working of these microbots inside the body or outside the body, in a series of paintings that I call the Tanshamachi and other, like, adjacent paintings, all of which were done before this January, and I mean, most of them still exist, and I mean, probably will be for sale. I mean, two of them were all, I sold two to my mother, but I mean, probably the rest will also be put to sell, and they were painted in a deliberately ambiguous way. It was ambiguous, like from like by intent, that as something that can be depicted both like space opera scenarios, like starships and stars and planets, and also microscopic scenes. And by chance, the actual robots, in many cases, look like the ones that, I mean, like the starships. Like in many occasions, they actually look like that. So this might be confusing to someone, but I actually started to watch those robots only this January, and this was all documented in this YouTube channel. I mean, and in like as rigorously as I could, given like, I mean, the limiting like circumstances. This, of course, was a proof, like a physical proof, beyond any doubt, that I am not Homo sapiens. Not that anyone cares, because everybody also, I mean, the intelligence services knew it. I mean, they don't want anyone like in the public to actually know about it. But yes, this is, I mean, you cannot deny this fact. I mean, I do not have white blood cells in my blood, and I have those neurons inside my blood. I mean, I'm not Homo sapiens. So, what I wanted to conduct experiments with those neurons outside the body, of course, and to see what they can do. And pretty quickly, I understood two things, very, very quickly. The first is that they can live outside my body, like, for relatively long time, even on just on the microscopic slide. Normally, biological like life form can live like in normal microscopic slide only for a couple of hours, or maybe 6 or 7 hours max, unless it's kind of like, I mean, there is a new kind of, I mean, in normal slides, which are like, I mean, 99.9999% of all slides. I mean, there is one specific type of slide that is like very, very unique, and which, I mean, can like support life like, I mean, for longer than that. But this is curiosity. But this is not true for the neurons. They can actually live for a long time, even just on a slide, without like any special, like, I mean, treatment. And I understood two things that are very important. First, these robots can create things that they create things, like create material things, create material objects, and do sculptures, like, or environmental, like, I mean, what they call gardening in the microscopic level. And second, I had very early conjecture this January that these guys can create life forms. Now, this is a huge, like, I would say, leap of like argumentation, like to say, okay, maybe they can create things, but I mean, it's one thing that, I mean, robots, they can create stuff, which is amazing in itself, but to say that they can actually create life, I mean, living things, I mean, this is against, like, I mean, it's against like the idea of like vivo ex vivo, which is so central in science, even though it wasn't always like that. It should be said that, I mean, it's not like like it wasn't always like a paradigm of human thought. It's actually pretty new. I mean, for most of like history, during like all of, I mean, throughout all the world, on all cultures, I mean, humans actually did not think that vivo ex vivo is correct. But let's put it aside. Like the idea of that life only, I mean, is created out of other life, which is like, it's accepted like as an axiom by many people today, like something that is true, like, without they actually need to prove it. But it wasn't like the tautology, like for like it was never actually a tautology, like something that is true, like by definition. It was actually, first of all, people didn't think all over the world, like throughout all of history, did not think that it is true for like almost like all of history. And when this was accepted as truth, only like a couple of 100 years ago, maybe 200 or 300 years ago, it was accepted as truth, not like by definition, but by like, I mean, by scientific observation. And I actually used a series of like experiments that are very similar to the famous experiments that were used to prove that vivo ex vivo maybe 300 years ago. I've actually used very similar experiments to prove exactly the opposite, that vivo not ex vivo ex nihilo, as I've said, and this was documented in this channel. This was documented in this channel, and the protocol for the experiment was interestingly very similar to the protocol of the experiment that was carried out like about 300 years ago to prove exactly the opposite. This is I focus on this issue because when we discuss life, the problem a main problem in the discussion is that many people today, they accept scientific claims as dogma, as things that are beyond the need to proof, like tautologies, things that are true by definition. And this is absurd because this is not how, I mean, because many of these like arguments were not always held as truth, but more importantly, when they were accepted as a universal truth, they were accepted as such by observation, not by change of dogma. And I should also say that I mean, like the main religions did not actually like, I mean, hold like a very, I mean, strong position one way or the other. Like as far as I know, like this is true for Judaism and also to Islam and also to Christianity, at least in the main streams, that they did not I understand, like they did all of them, like they like, I mean, thinkers like that belong to all of these religions, actually along the years they've written about like the issue of vivo ex vivo, but it was kind of like universal, not to accept it as either, like, I mean, as dogma. I mean, as something that, I mean, maybe it is, maybe vivo ex vivo is true and maybe not. And like if we speak about, like, I mean, Orthodox Judaism, to this day there are these like books like that are written like in halacha, like, I mean, the Jewish law, that do not accept like vivo ex vivo as something that, I mean, as a dogma, and they leave like the option of vivo ex nihilo as something that might be true. And actually, and it's kind of, and these are books that are written today for, like, that, I mean, that presumably, I mean, like, I mean, dictate Jewish law for Orthodox people today. And this was certainly the case during like the Talmud, like the Talmud days, that they certainly did not like accept, as all other like scholars like throughout the whole world during this time, they did not think that vivo ex vivo is true. And also them, like, I mean, this is certain. So this is an important issue with regards to life, because if you want to speak about life in intelligent way and in constructive way, you, first of all, I mean, you need to be scientific about it and not religious. I mean, because when you take like specific, like I would say, scientific arguments or theories, and you put like, I mean, as a dogma, as things that is beyond truth, or like beyond like a proof, or things that, I mean, are truth by definition. I mean, you make like, it's like taking a snapshot of science in a specific time, and just, I mean, freezing it and creating religion out of it, which is absurd. Why should you do it? And like and humans didn't do it like for like throughout all like I mean history, and like I mean all over, like I mean and like all over the world. I mean, people didn't, like, mostly they didn't do, I mean, sometimes they did, like I mean, and the famous case for this is actually the problematic stand of the Catholic Church with regards to the issue of geocentrism versus heliocentrism. And this was a great mistake. But the Catholic Church, I mean, they had their own mistakes. I mean, I'm the last one to say that they were always right, the Catholic Church. So yes, it was done in the past, but this was a mistake. It was a mistake. I mean, and why should you do now? I mean, why should you people, like in the 21st century, like repeat the same mistakes that, I mean, of the Catholic Church for like, that they've done like 1,000 years ago? And so any intelligible like discussion regarding life should, I mean, be based first of all on observation. Like you have eyes, like God has given you eyes. Guys have given, I mean, why did has God given you eyes if they didn't want you to actually see? Like, I mean, you have eyes. You need to seek observation, and observation is incredibly important. Now, it's not the only thing that's important. I mean, yes, belief is also important, and rationalism is also important, like from a philosophical point of view. But I mean, you have eyes, so I mean, why should you, I mean, accept like a certain snapshot of scientific knowledge as a religious dogma? Like, I mean, the famous case of like Aristotle and like and the Catholic Church. And also, as a side note, I would say that in reality, I mean, the stand of like the Catholic stand on the issue of like heliocentrism is actually was more complicated than, I mean, the popular view. So in reality, I mean, what I've just said is not even that is not accurate, because the history, this kind of the history of is much more. This is extremely oversimplified. Like, so people can actually like remember, like, you know, the Galileo trial, and you know, before that Giordano Bruno trial, and like, I mean, but the reality was much more complicated than that, but I it's not the time to get into it. So even within the Catholic Church, I mean, it wasn't like the actual thing. I mean, the actual stand was much more complicated, and but let's not get into it now. What was observed during this January, and it's in the YouTube videos. This was observed that when I placed. So I should say that, I mean, a very early interest of mine was to see how they act, the Neros, the robots, when they are put together on a slide with biological material. For example, flies, small flies. And I've had several of those. And also, like, I put it like in the freezer after I prepared the slides, because I've had all sorts of experiments, and one of the, several experiments was to see what happens in like freezing environment. And it was quickly evident to me that actually they work very well in freezing environment, the Neros. And like only later I understood that most probably this is true because these are superconductors, and superconductors work much more efficiently in a very, very low temperature, but they are superconductors that are different from anything else that humans actually know, because it's almost certain, I have no scientific way to actually like prove it 100%, but there is a ton of evidence in these videos in the channel that these Neros, these robots, are superconductors that, I wouldn't say room temperature superconductor, but close to that. I mean, that they manifest the physical behaviors of superconductors in low temperature but far higher temperature than what is used, like what is known to humans, because humans know about superconductors like more than 100 years, and they're actually used in manufacturing and in the industry, but they are very expensive to use because they require very, very low temperature that that is very expensive to maintain. Sometimes it's cost effective, it's like beneficial, but usually it's not. That's why they are not used much more, because it's very expensive to create like such low temperature environments. But these guys, the Neros, the robots, they manifest the behavior of superconductivity even in just a normal freezer, which means like minus 20 Celsius, which is something that is very easy to actually, like, it's not expensive, to create such, to construct such environments. And I should say that even like in room temperature, even in temperatures that are much higher than room temperature, even like in an electrolysis chamber, which is like the water is like reach temperatures of like 60 or 70 degrees Celsius, even in such temperatures where like normal, like almost all conductors will, not just superconductors, any kind of conductors will suffer like tremendously, like from less of like conductivity. Actually, even in this temperature, they even then they manifest like the behavior of superconductors. This should be said. But yes, it was demonstrated just from the beginning that they work much better in freezing temperature, like inside like a normal freezer, like a house freezer. To say that it might also, but I still, this is still in research. But it's an ongoing research. But there are strong clues that they have ways that I do not understand and probably are not immediately derivative from the Lorentz law, to use like the fact, when they are inside the magnetic field, when they move inside the magnetic field, it also energizes them in ways that I do not understand, and I suspect are not, trivial, implication of the Lorentz law. But this is, it's still an ongoing process, and probably this is also a reason why, like, they enjoyed being inside the freezer, not only because of the freezing temperature, but also because of the magnetic the magnetism of the of the structure of the freezer. Now, very early this January, I've seen the following. First, that when you take these samples out of the freezer after a long freeze, immediately after that, I just wiped like the frost from the slide and put it under the microscope, and when I used the maximum magnification, not maximum, but something like 900 magnification, I've seen the Neros like with like yellow pools that to this day I do not understand. This is still one of the questions. What exactly is the nature of the yellow pools? Even though probably the answer is something, I would say probably like trivial. But let's put it aside. Like let's put the issue of the yellow pool aside. But because this is one of the conundrums that followed my research for like since the beginning. What are the yellow pools? But you see the Neros, like the black like circles with yellow pools inside. But more importantly, using the maximum magnification, you could see, and this is documented in the channel, it's not science fiction, you could see living, like, moving objects, small objects that look like germs or possibly, I don't know, giant viruses, I don't know, perhaps giant viruses, but most probably small like microbes, and they were moving just out of the freezer. And they were moving like with very, not like, like inside like a thawing like frost material, but the way that, I mean, they're moving like, energetic worms. And you don't need to be like a professor of biology to understand that something incredibly, peculiar is taking place. And since that moment, I had two conjectures. First, that both of these conjectures were proven to be 100% true later. First, that these neurons can create not only sculptures and environmental structures, but also life forms. Of course, by definition, they will not be life forms like, they will not be life forms like, that you, in the current definition of life forms, but so I should say synthetic life forms. But again, we should rediscuss the definition. But for our purpose, let's say that they can create synthetic life forms, and second, that they actually eat those synthetic life forms, and also the non-synthetic life forms. And I should say that probably now the most I would say that from all the evidence that I have, the most probable theory with regards to the yellow pools, and it's kind of like a not extremely interesting theory, out of all the rest of them, but all of the other theories were not supported by evidence, like during the last 6 months. That what I now think is that the yellow pools is just the digestion of all sorts of microscopic material, and they were just feeding. That the yellow pools are just feeding like digestive material. But let's put it aside; it's not of critical importance. Also, another very interesting thing that was demonstrated on this January, say from the beginning, is that yes, what I was hoped was correct is that I can actually direct those nanobots by giving visual clues. For example, we've seen that they replicate the leg of a fly, which was amazing. So this led me to understand many things about the neurons. First, that they communicate with each other. Second, that they have properties that are way beyond anything that is known to that break many tenets of physics. That physics cannot explain what they actually do. How can they communicate? How can they and also that they have symbolic understanding, that they are like a civilization, that they have recollection of they have memories, and this was proven by further experimentation, all of which are documented, and that they have symbolic language, and that if I can use the symbolic language to communicate with them. And also, and this is another aspect of the divination, the divine issue here, is that this symbolic language was not entirely new to me, because I have already I already during this time, it was actually more than a year into my artistic vocation. When of painting and also sculpturing, but mostly painting, and a substantial amount of substantial part of my occupation with my artistic occupation was a discovery, or I would say a discovery, and yes, this discovery and interpretation of a symbolic language that I always interpreted as communication between me and aliens in starships. This is repeated in many of my paintings. Even that one. This is an example of the symbolic language. Okay, what you see here is this was created before this January, and these things repeat in all many of my paintings. So I understood that this symbolic language that I interpreted as something that is between me and the starship. It's to a great extent, it's also true for the communication between me and those robots. Now, another very important discovery was, so I thought like, okay, how can we energize them, like give them energy? Because I understood, okay, they need energy. I mean, obviously, like maybe not, but I mean, it makes sense that they can use like energy for like their, for the various things that they do. There were many things. I cannot repeat everything. Like, what materials they can work with, how to maintain them, how to, how to store them, and like what's the preferred like containers like for them to do different stuff. There were tons of questions. Like, and also the major questions of what's the proper way to actually make them multiply. And how do they multiply? And like, we want them to multiply outside like my body. Certainly they multiply inside my body, but how do we make them multiply outside my body? And this was a major, like, I can't repeat everything. Like, it was a major topic with many experimentation like throughout the last 6 months. So and like, also when they multiply, how do they do it? Like, do they start small and getting bigger, or do they like clone like in whatever size that they are? And the answer is actually, that they both is true. That they can clone themselves like in whatever size that they are, but they can also grow. Maybe just another one thing that it should be said, that right from the start it was obvious to me that what's an amazing property of these robots, that they come in huge variety of sizes. This is not true to any kind of life form that we know of, and also this is actually not true to any machine that we know of. Almost any machine. Also, even it's not true even to almost all fantastic depictions of microbots that you can find in scientific literature and cinema. It's usually they have like a size factor. But these, of course, I was limited by my own microscope. But when I use the 1000 magnification, the maximum that I can use, I've seen many of these robots. And when I use the 64 magnification, which is the minimal, I also seen many of them in different sizes, which means that they come in huge variety of sizes. And I have no idea, and to this day I have no idea to know like how small they can be. My conjecture was that they can be like the smallest are actually in the nanoscopic scale, and I cannot prove it because I don't have an electron microscope, and I don't have both the knowledge and also the laboratory equipment to think about argumentative protocols for like experiments that will prove the nanoscopic existence of these robots without actually watching the robots. This probably can be done, but it requires like more rigorous knowledge of biology, and also much more sophisticated laboratory equipment to actually execute these protocols. But maybe you have like you have like samples of these robots. You can tell me if you've seen them like in the nanoscopic level, or who knows. So I would just say that I've done all sorts of like experiments with electricity, and what was the most like successful by far was to actually put these robots in electrolysis chamber, and using the method of electrolysis to energize them. And it was right away demonstrated that they can create life, even non-microscopic life forms, worms, specifically worms that are non-microscopic, that you can see in the naked eye, about this size, and that they can live like and like in all sorts of environments and move. And certainly they are nothing like anything that ever existed in Earth. And I couldn't like it was incredibly interesting to actually study these life forms, but I didn't have like the means and the time and I mean it's like a science in itself. Like I mean the research of these new life forms, non-microscopic life forms, and up to now I don't have like the means to do it like in my room, like small room here. I mean you should, I mean, first create terrariums or like with, I mean, specific materials. They require like they are not normal worms. They like oil, the oilish materials, like and like they like oil, and they live like very well inside oil. And there are tons of questions. It's a new science. Like I mean, the zoology, like I mean, alien zoology, and to now I cannot like I don't have the efforts to actually even start to investigate it, even though it's incredibly interesting. Now, during my time here in this hostel, I would say the second, like since April, the second like stage of this house arrest, I actually conducted very successful experiments on the issue of how to clone or multiply the robots and the Neros, and it was. There are actually two, I would say, ways to do it, like I would say, major, I mean, pathways to do it. I would say the organic path and the electronic path. Now, the electronic path is to put them inside like electrolysis chamber, and this should be done in a very specific way, and giving also the specific commands. You need to understand the symbolic language, which is a major issue in all my research. And then, I mean, you can manually like tell them, okay, use the resource, and you need to give them correct resources and to tell them to multiply, to clone. This can be done, and it was done. It was documented very well in this channel. But it's got all sorts of limitations because electrolysis is a very cumbersome process, and it's a huge issue. But yes, it was proven that it could be done. And there is another way, which is actually like a much better way, but also a problematic, which is to do it organically, which means to put these Neros like inside a liquid, and the liquid should be mostly, I mean, not contain water, but it should be things that, I mean, like, I mean, mostly it's like it's pee, like my pee and my semen, and also all sort of kind of oil, like wax and oil and like different types of oils, and also a little bit of other materials, and it would give and after some time, what you see is that, like about a month, you start to see, I mean, you see that they created like a ecosystem, that they actually created all sorts of like life forms, all sorts of like microbes, and they are feeding off these microbes. They eat the microbes, and that they multiply tremendously. And this way, I was able to actually, and I still have like several, I would say, I mean, maybe 2 liters, I mean, in different containers of this liquid. Some of it is actually I used like in all sorts of experiments, but most of it I'm still keeping, like, I mean, and still replenishing and adding all sorts of material that I think that they need. And it's actually, most of it is still here, like in this container. And this liquid, and of course it's in a huge quantity. I mean, much more than I ever had, because I mean, until then all the liquid that I had, I mean, was mostly taken from my semen, which, I mean, there is a limit to how much I can produce, and a little bit of like my pee. But this is also problematic, I mean, to take the pee. But I mean, mostly my semen, and I mean. And now, like, I have liters of it. I mean, so, I mean, tremendously more, but even the density of inside this liquid is much higher than, I mean, whatever was inside my semen. And also the sizes are much larger. I mean, you can see them in huge sizes now. And so now I have like tremendous amount of these, like, I mean, robots in larger sizes than ever, and and I keep them in containers, and part of it I use for all sorts of experiments, but mostly it's like in jars that I keep with that I keep with, and I just let them multiply and like doing their stuff, which is to create life forms and to eat them and multiply and get bigger. Now the major setback, I mean the major problem with this approach is like compared to the other, like to the electrical approach that I just described, is the fact that what you have is not like a, I mean, in the with the electrical approach you have like, I mean, a mixture that contains like that contains no life form of any kind, like only the neurons. And like, I mean, in the other method, like what you have in your hand is a liquid that contains a huge amount of neurons, and very big ones, and with great like concentration, very high concentration, but also, I mean, with it, a ton of life forms that are, maybe some of it are biological, that somehow got into there and managed to survive, even though this is very, it's very kind of like a bad. This is like these aquariums like are very hostile to life because they contain like iodine and like hydrogen peroxide, and like, I mean, and like industrial oils. I mean, so, I mean, but maybe some kind of like mutated life forms, like all sorts of mutants. But in addition to it, all sorts of like synthetic life forms. And I mean, if you want just the neurons, like, because I mean, so all sorts of like experimentations that you want to do, you don't want like all the other life forms, but maybe you do. I mean, it's a question like what exactly are these life forms, and I mean, what they are made of, and what you can do with it. I mean, there are tons of questions that I can't answer the questions because I mean, I'm only one person, and I mean, yeah, I work on it like for like 6 months, but I mean, certainly I mean, you would want to conduct experiments sometimes not without all these like life forms that, I mean, will certainly contaminate the result, like in all sort of like ways. And so there are actually ways to eliminate those life forms. I mean, it will be difficult to do it with like normal like anti-life agents like soap or alcohol or iodine, which, by the way, the neurons are 100% immune to the effects. Like, I mean, this was proven long ago that they don't care at all about this. But probably the life forms are also, I mean, I need to conduct more experiments, but I would guess that probably these life forms are also, they wouldn't like, they probably will not be, all of them will be dead by just iodine and I don't know, because they were created in mixture that were on the first place contain large amounts of iodine peroxide and alcohol and iodine. So, I mean, if they were born and raised in this environment, why should more of the same will kill them? Probably it will not kill them at all. And also, if it would, I mean, you don't want to actually, I mean, dilute the liquid. I mean, the whole idea is like to have like a liquid that contains large amount of the robots and big ones. So there is another way, which is to actually to put the liquid inside the electrolysis chamber and to use like high voltage, like, I mean, use like I have like a transformer, like a DC transformer that I mean, that creates around like 40 volts, which is relatively high for like home transformers. So yes, when you use that, I mean, there is also, and there is like there are all sorts of like, I mean, factors of how to actually run the electrolysis, like how to wire it, and how to, I mean, what materials should be used. And the electrolysis is very cumbersome and very delicate because, and I've had many experiments and also documented that, but again, I cannot reiterate everything. But yes, I mean, it was proven that, I mean, using the correct form of electrolysis, specifically relatively high voltage electrolysis, you can actually destroy these life forms. Like, using just electricity, you can destroy the life forms, but the neurons are not dead. I mean, they are not destroyed. So after some time, you are left with a liquid that contains neurons as you wanted, but I mean, almost all of the life forms are dead. But the problem is that, I mean, this liquid is extremely murky. Like, I mean, it's like, I mean, yes, I mean, you under the microscope, you see that the neurons survive and they are fine. But I mean, the liquid, which on the first place was, I mean, it came with like the aquarium. So from the first place, it was like, I mean, gooey, as you understand. Like, I mean, it's not clean at all. But now, I mean, it contained like, I mean, it's like a pool of like, I mean, dead like synthetic life forms that were electrocuted and shredded to death. And this is also, I mean, probably will contaminate the results. So that's why the waters from the aquariums are, I mean, they have disadvantage. I mean, comparing like compared to, I mean, creating like the Neros like with electrolysis, and of course it takes much longer because, I mean, using electricity it's much more quicker. So both like paths, I mean, have their advantages and disadvantages, and both paths certainly can be, I mean, improved tremendously for certain. I mean, like more experimentation would certainly, I mean, produce much better results. I mean, both of like how to create like the neurons, like, I mean, using electricity and without life forms, and also the organic path of like letting them multiply and with like synthetic life forms that they create and also eat. Both ways, I mean, can be, of course, greatly enhanced for certain. Now, another tremendous advancement that took place like about a month ago or 2 months ago was that after a lot of like many experiments and much better understanding of the symbolic language, I understand how I can actually tell the neurons specifically to enlarge life forms that are in their vicinity. It might sound fantastic, but it was proven, I mean, documented. And using the electrolysis method and the electrolysis chamber, I was able to, it was a specific day, I mean, it was like a breakthrough, and I was able like to create, like to, I placed like, I mean, like water from the aquarium inside the electrolysis chamber that, I mean, with the neurons and like all sorts of like synthetic life forms. Some, as you understand, are much bigger than like, I mean, comparable biological life forms, and as you've already seen under the microscope during the last previous days, like, I mean, from the samples from the paintings. But so they were big, but they were not humongous. But I was able to actually give commands like, and to create like specifically electrolysis chamber with specifics, I mean, parameters. And after not long, like something like a hour, when I watched like, I mean, the experiment to disconnect the circuit, and what I've seen was amazing. It was documented. It's not science fiction. What I've seen was amazing. So what I've seen is that yes, I mean, using high voltage, relatively high voltage electrolysis, you can tell the neurons to specifically create larger life forms. And in one day, we have like seen like a huge jump in the size factors. I mean, we have seen like microbes that they can be seen in the naked eye. And if you don't believe it, I will actually show it to you. I mean, very soon. But it was already documented. Yes, microbes that can be seen in the naked. I mean, if this sounds like a paradox, I mean, you need to change your definitions. And I do not believe that such things ever existed on Earth, like in the last 4.5 billion years or so. I mean, I don't think that ever such things existed on Earth, but they exist right now in these containers. Unless they died, like, I mean, but let's take a look. But this was not so huge life forms, and also, I mean, worm-like creatures like up to 10 centimeters. And the reason that I stopped this experimentation is that I don't have like, I mean, the proper like containers for such animals. Like, I mean, presumably I could have like continued like to see, I mean, like how big they can become, but I have I don't have like the tools, like, and not only to create them, but I don't have like I have how to store it. Like I don't want to create like just life forms that, I mean, I will just throw to the garbage. Like, I mean, yes. But by the way, if you ask yourself, I mean, just a very interesting dude, but I mean, just a question. I mean, are you certain that what you do now is not like, I mean, by any chance, like, I mean, killing all humanity? So I would say, yeah, I mean, the option, I mean, the possibility actually occurred to me, and I would say that I, I, my interpretation of such a path is more like, I mean, on the lines of upgrade, like more than like elimination. I mean, I prefer to use like the term of upgrade, or I mean, improving, not eliminating. I would say, I mean, updating, like, I mean, the dominant life forms in Earth. So, but let's not to get into it. But this is a little bit political. But yes, I mean, this, I mean, this, I would say, eventuality, I mean, cool to me, and I tend to think of it like along the lines of upgrade. So, but the reason why I stopped, like, I mean, experimentation was like, specifically, like, I mean, creating big life forms that I don't have where to store it. Like, I mean, I don't have, like, I don't have, like, this is, I mean, this, you see, I mean, it's such a small room. I always need to move things like around, just, I mean, to so I can conduct my experiments and like the paintings and things like that. So that's why I stopped with that, because I don't have like a place to put it and keep them alive, and that there are so many questions, like how to actually store them and to investigate it. But yes, I mean, some of these life forms are actually, I mean, not the biggest ones. The biggest ones I just, I mean, I placed like somewhere like on the streets or so. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they're in the sewers. I don't know, Tel Aviv. So like, I mean, but the smaller one, which were also huge, like, I mean, are still in the containers. So we might take a look on a few of those today. And it should be very, very interesting. So this video is quite long. I will stop now and continue very shortly, and I will address specifically the videos. It will be like a short response video to things that I've seen like in the Angry Astronaut channel, which, I mean, directly related to what we have just spoken about.